It was supposed to be a night about me. That's what Jenna said when she pulled me into the kitchen that morning, acting coy and cheerful, barely hiding the smug glint in her eyes. "Don't make plans tonight," she said, like it was a casual favor. "Just wear something nice." She kissed me on the cheek and walked out before I could ask questions. She knew I'd comply. I always did. 7 years of marriage teaches you when to play along. And lately I'd been doing a lot of that, playing along. So, I put on a pressed shirt, tied a knot that looked decent enough, and showed up at the address she texted me 2 hours before. A coworker's loft. Downtown. No parking. Street noise bouncing off brick walls. I remember thinking, funny place to celebrate a guy like me. The second I walked in, I was hit with the smell of expensive candles and red wine. Low jazz played from somewhere in the ceiling, and warm light poured through antique glass fixtures. Everyone looked polished, like the kind of people who casually drop words like bespoke or mid-century modern into conversation without blinking. I didn't know half of them. Some came up to greet me. "You must be Jenna's husband," they'd say, like I was a footnote, a +1 to my own night. The man of the hour, but not the man they came to see. There was a thinness to their smiles, like they'd been told to play nice. One guy from her firm, Damien I think, told me he'd seen my TEDx talk. "Real inspiring stuff," he said, looking at his drink. I hadn't done a talk in 3 years. Then I saw her. She was standing in the center of the room, near the fireplace, holding a glass of wine in her left hand. Her right rested lightly on her hip, the way she used to when she was feeling confident, sharp, magnetic. She wore a black satin dress with a low back and a delicate twist at the waist. I'd never seen it before. Not in our closet, not on a receipt, not in a package. And Jenna's not the type to wear something new without modeling it for me first. That used to be our thing. I'd sit on the bed while she tried on outfits and spun around, laughing. That hasn't happened in months. She caught my eye and smiled like nothing was off. But something was off. It wasn't just the dress. It was her posture. The way she tilted her head when people spoke to her. How she leaned in too close, like every conversation was private. The laugh louder, sharper than usual, like she was trying too hard to fill the space. I stood off to the side for a while, watching. People mingled, made their way to the bar. Someone tapped a spoon against a glass and called for attention. A hush fell over the room. Jenna stepped forward. "Hi, everyone," she began, raising her glass. "Thank you all for coming tonight. It means so much to both of us." She gestured toward me with her wine hand. Everyone turned and smiled politely in my direction. I nodded. I just wanted to take a second to acknowledge someone very important to me. Someone who supported me through every late night, every deadline, every ridiculous Pinterest board I forced him to look at. There were chuckles. My husband, Alex. He's the steady one. The calm in the storm. The guy who never complains, even when I drag him to 4 lighting stores in a single afternoon. He's the reason I can do what I do. There was clapping. A few cheers. I should have felt proud. I should have felt seen. But all I felt was a strange sort of distance. Like I was listening to someone deliver a speech at a stranger's wedding. The words were right, but the weight behind them was hollow. And that's when it happened. As she spoke, right in the middle of a sentence about how his belief in me never wavers, a man stepped up behind her. He wasn't clapping. He wasn't smiling. Just there. Mid-30s, clean-cut, button-down shirt open at the collar. Not someone I recognized. And then he did it. He placed his hand gently on her waist. Not a fleeting gesture. Not a tap for attention. It lingered. Fingers pressed just firmly enough to be familiar. His thumb moved slightly, like tracing a path across fabric he'd touched before. Her back arched just a little, but enough for me to notice. Enough for me to understand this wasn't the first time. Jenna didn't flinch. She didn't pull away. She kept talking. And somewhere in the middle of her next sentence, she looked at me. Just for a second. Her smile twitched. Her eyes didn't apologize. They acknowledged. She knew I saw. And I think she knew exactly what it looked like. The room erupted in clapping again. and she finished her toast with a raised glass and a kiss blown in my direction. People turned to me, expecting me to smile, to say something witty in return. I raised my drink, nodded stiffly, and swallowed the lump in my throat along with half a glass of wine. That was the moment something snapped. Not in a dramatic way. No shouting. No confrontation. Just a click. Quiet, internal shift. Like when you realize the mirror isn't dirty. It's cracked. And the stains you keep wiping off aren't on the surface. They're behind the glass. The rest of the night passed like a movie I didn't want to be in. People laughed, posed for photos, talked about sustainable materials and boutique firms. A woman complimented my shoes. Someone else asked if I was in tech. I barely responded. I nodded, smiled when necessary, but my mind was stuck in that 3-second loop. The hand, the waist, the look. Later, when the crowd thinned and the music got softer, Jenna found me standing on the balcony. "Hey, stranger," she said, brushing invisible lint off my lapel. "You've been so quiet tonight." I looked at her. Really looked. "How do you know that guy?" I asked, flatly. She blinked, then smiled. "Oh, Peter? He helped us with the lighting rig earlier. He works with events." "Lighting rig?" I repeated. "Yeah." I asked him to move a bunch of stuff. My back's been *ling me. She turned to look out at the skyline. "I think I strained something dragging crates." I said nothing. She turned back to me and touched my arm. "Don't overthink things, okay?" she said, her voice light. "You always get this way after big social stuff. You start analyzing everything." I stared past her, into the glass door, where our reflections shimmered in the light of the string bulbs. She looked flawless. I looked exhausted. "Come back inside," she said softly. "People want to toast to you." I didn't move. She leaned in, kissed my cheek, and whispered, "Let's just enjoy tonight. Yeah?" Then she slipped away, back to the laughter, back to the crowd. I stayed out there a while, watching my reflection shift with the breeze, wondering when it stopped looking like me, wondering how long she'd been rehearsing that speech, wondering who else knew, and most of all, wondering how I'd missed it. The next morning, I woke up before Jenna. Her side of the bed was still warm, which meant she must have come in late. Later than me, even. I didn't hear her return. Or maybe I had and just chose to pretend I didn't. She was lying on her stomach, breathing steady, one arm flung over to my side. It used to be endearing. Now, it felt like a placeholder gesture, something designed to make me believe we were still us. I stared at the ceiling for a long time. My mind kept going back to the night before, replaying it in high-definition slow motion. The hand, the way she didn't flinch, the look she gave me, small, sharp, deliberate, and then that strange little smile that followed, like she'd already worked through the consequences in her head and filed them away. I got up quietly, showered, dressed. By the time I came downstairs, she was at the kitchen table in her robe, sipping coffee and scrolling on her phone like it was any other Sunday. "Morning," she said with that same smile she always used. I nodded, grabbed a mug, poured myself a cup. The silence between us stretched. She filled it with light talk. Something about needing to finalize drawings for a new hotel project. Someone on her team dropping the ball. How she'd probably be working late most of the week. I nodded again. She kept talking, like if she filled the space fast enough, I wouldn't ask the one question she knew I wanted to. I didn't ask it. I didn't need to, not yet. Instead, I watched her. Every blink. Every pause. The tap of her nails on the ceramic mug. The way she glanced at her phone every few minutes like she was waiting for a text that hadn't come yet, or didn't want to be caught reading one in front of me. After she left for the day, I sat at the kitchen table for a long time. I didn't touch my coffee. I just sat there, staring at the empty chair she'd been in, trying to calculate when exactly things had started to shift. It wasn't last night. No, last night was just the point where it became undeniable. But the signs? They'd been there. God, they'd been everywhere. And I'd ignored them. One by one, they started flooding back. Memories, oddities, things that I had brushed aside out of politeness, trust, or just plain apathy. But now, in hindsight, they felt like puzzle pieces I'd had in my hand the whole time but refused to put together. It started with the late nights. A few months back, she told me she was consulting more directly with clients, contractors, lighting designers, even logistics teams. That meant meetings that didn't end until 9 or 10 at night. Sometimes later, she'd come home tired, worn out, but oddly distant. I chalked it up to stress. She's always taken her work seriously, always been the one to go the extra mile. I used to admire that about her. Then the bathroom habit started. She used to leave her phone lying around without a second thought. Now, it was glued to her hand. She'd take it into the bathroom, into the closet. She turned the brightness down. She started wearing AirPods while folding laundry. "I like listening to podcasts," she said. "It helps me zone out." Zone out. There was a day 3 weeks ago, maybe, when I got into her car to grab my charger. That's all I was doing. Just grabbing a charger. But on the back seat was a beanie. A man's beanie. Navy blue, with a stitched leather tag. Not mine. When she got home that night, I asked her about it. "Oh, that?" she said, barely looking up. "One of the interns left it. I gave him a ride after one of the site visits." An intern. I believed her. At least I acted like I did. That same week, I noticed a half-finished bottle of mineral water in the cup holder. Evian. "We don't buy Evian." She said the client brought it in during a meeting. Left it there. Client. Intern. Coworker. Always someone else. Always justifiable. Always benign. And then there was the laptop. New password. Jenna's never been secretive. We've always known each other's passcodes, laptop logins. We shared everything from calendars to cloud storage. One night, I tried logging into her Mac to access our shared Dropbox folder, and I got hit with a prompt, "Incorrect password." "Sorry," she said, with a laugh that didn't quite reach her eyes. "IT made us update them for security. I'll give it to you later." She never did. I never asked again. Why didn't I ask again? I don't know. Maybe I didn't want to invite the answer. Maybe I was afraid that asking would make the suspicion real. That it would say something about me, that I had become the kind of person who doubts his wife. And the perfume. God, how did I miss the perfume? She used to wear something light, airy, floral. I can't even remember the name now, but I remember the feeling of it. Familiar, gentle. One day it was gone. Replaced by something heavier, muskier, the kind of scent that filled a room and lingered long after she left. When I first noticed, I said, "You smell different." She smiled and said, "Thought I'd try something new." That was it. That was the whole conversation. I didn't ask why, or when, or who for. And just like that, I stopped noticing things. Or maybe I stopped wanting to notice. Even the way she kissed me changed. More deliberate. Less frequent, sometimes on the cheek, sometimes not at all. There were nights I'd reach for her, and she'd respond with a distracted smile and a quiet, "I'm just so tired." Tired. I'd gotten so used to hearing that word I stopped hearing it. Like white noise, like traffic in the background. But now, with everything laid out in front of me, every little moment, every shift in routine, every unexplained object or look or silence, I saw it all for what it was. Pattern. A design. And not the kind she'd present to clients. This one was calculated. Slippery. Built not to impress, but to conceal. I walked into the guest room and pulled open the drawer where we kept paperwork. I started going through receipts, booking emails, expense summaries. She always handled the travel. I was never good with dates, and she liked planning. But now I started cross-referencing. One trip, she said, was to Chicago for a conference. The airline confirmation had her flying into Dallas. She said she was meeting a group. The hotel receipt showed a king bed, just one guest listed. There was another from Phoenix. Same pattern. I sat on the edge of the bed, heart pounding, hands cold. This was real. This wasn't jealousy. This wasn't paranoia. It wasn't insecurity. It was evidence. She'd counted on my silence, my trust, My predictable belief that everything could be explained with a smile and a clever excuse. She'd we asterisk p asterisk nized my reliability against me. And the worst part? It had worked. For months. I leaned back, closed my eyes, and breathed in through my nose. The faintest trace of her perfume still lingered in the room. Heavy. Lingering. Just like everything else she left behind. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't break anything. But a part of me started to come awake. The part that had been asleep for too long. A week after the party, Jenna told me she had a trip coming up. Texas. Investor meetings, she said, casually dropping it into conversation like she was talking about dry cleaning. She packed light, too light. A single carry-on with folded outfits I didn't recognize and a compact toiletries bag that looked brand new. I'll probably be swamped, she added, zipping up the suitcase. So don't wait up for calls. I'll text when I can. Text when she could. Not call. Not talk. Text. There was something chilling in how easily she'd shifted the rules of our communication without asking. Like she expected I'd adapt, like I always had. I told her to have a safe flight. She kissed me on the cheek and walked out the door with a brightness that didn't match the tension blooming in my chest. The house felt different within minutes of her leaving. Like the absence of her footsteps revealed all the hollow spaces I'd ignored. I tried to distract myself with work, with dinner, with mindless scrolling, but my brain kept circling back to that damn hand on her waist. To the receipts. To the late nights and the perfume and the locked laptop. By 9:30, I'd managed to convince myself I was overthinking. That maybe she needed space, needed independence, needed professional validation. I was halfway through that rationalization when my phone buzzed with a bank notification. A hotel charge. But not the hotel she'd listed on her itinerary. Not the chain the firm preferred. This was someplace else. Small, boutique, tucked in the kind of district people choose when they don't want to be recognized. The timestamp hadn't even cooled. I stared at the notification long enough to memorize the digits. And something inside me went still. No panic, no meltdown. Just a clarity I didn't know I was capable of. I grabbed my keys. 6 hours is a long drive when you're holding onto a single piece of information like it's your oxygen. The road stretched endlessly, dark and empty, lit occasionally by headlights of cars passing in the opposite direction. I barely registered music or the signs on the highway. My mind kept running 2 parallel tracks. One replaying every strange detail I'd ignored, the other planning what I'd do when I got there. I wasn't going to storm in. I wasn't going to cause a scene. I just needed truth. Real truth. Not the curated version she had been feeding me for months. Around 2:15 a.m., I pulled into the hotel's lot. The place was modern, upscale, designed for privacy. Floor-to-ceiling windows in the lobby. Concrete walls softened by warm-toned lights. A front desk clerk who looked too exhausted to care about anyone's business. I walked in like I belonged there. "Hi," I said, keeping my voice steady. "My wife should have checked in earlier tonight, Jenna. I need to know if she made it." The clerk glanced at the computer. "Last name." I gave it. He typed, and typed again. Then he nodded. "Yes, she checked in around 8 p.m. Room for 2 guests, 3-night stay." Room for 2. There it was. Confirmed. No wiggle room. No plausible deniability. No script she could rehearse her way out of. The clerk kept talking, offering to call the room, asking if I needed an extra key, but the words blurred into static. I thanked him, turned around, walked outside, and let the cold air hit me like a bucket of water. I didn't go up to the room. I didn't need to see her. I didn't need a dramatic reveal or a confrontation with a man I already hated without knowing. I just needed to observe, to gather facts, to understand what I was up against. The parking lot was dim but not deserted. Cars sat quietly beneath the yellow lights, some with dashboards illuminated, some completely dark. I wandered, scanning license plates, looking for something, anything, that tied the loose threads together. And then I saw it. A silver SUV parked near the back. I recognized it instantly. I'd seen it at the party. It had the company's event team logo on the side in subtle lettering. Easy to miss unless you were staring straight at it. And on the corner of the dashboard, tucked behind the windshield, was a laminated work badge. His badge. The man who'd rested his hand on her waist like it lived there. Seeing that badge felt like someone pressing a finger into a bruise, confirmation and pain at the same time. I walked around the car, taking quiet photos, the plates, the badge, the logo, the timestamp on my phone screen. I photographed the hotel sign, the lobby door, even the damn trash can next to the parking stall, as if that added some kind of documentation. I wasn't angry in that moment. I wasn't devastated. I wasn't even surprised. I was methodical, cold, clear. It's strange how your brain protects you, how shock pulls you out of your own emotions. I stood there under the parking lot lights, half expecting the world to tilt, or for someone to walk out and accuse me of trespassing. But nothing happened. Just a quiet Texas night swallowing the last remnants of my denial. When I drove home, dawn was breaking. Orange light cracked open the sky, painting everything in a color I couldn't categorize. Not hopeful, not bleak, something in between. I didn't cry. I thought I might, but the tears never came. Instead, I thought about logistics, paperwork, passwords, bank accounts, the house, the car, the mortgage. And somewhere along mile 50, I had a single sharp realization. I didn't want to confront her. I didn't want answers. I didn't want apologies. I didn't want her explanations or the inevitable performance of regret. I wanted control, not revenge, not chaos, not drama, control. By the time I stepped back into the house, something inside me had changed. The man who walked out 6 hours earlier was uncertain, hopeful, desperate for reassurance. The man who walked back in was something else, someone who had stopped expecting honesty and started preparing for impact. I took out my phone and created a new folder. Evidence. I labeled it. Then I added the photos, the hotel charge, the badge, the booking confirmation I'd found earlier. For the first time in months, everything made sense. The missing pieces of the puzzle didn't just fit. They clicked into place with a sound so definitive it felt like it echoed through the house. Jenna didn't know it yet, but the version of me she counted on, the trusting one, the patient one, the blind one, was gone. And the one left in his place had a plan. After that night, everything I did was quiet, clean, methodical. I didn't yell. I didn't accuse. I didn't even bring it up. The moment I saw that hotel check-in with her name attached and his car parked out back, it was like something mechanical switched on inside me. The part of me that handled negotiations, damage control, audits, the part that ran toward chaos with a clipboard, not a baseball bat. I became calm, almost too calm. The same calm I imagine surgeons feel before slicing open something that used to be whole. By the time Jenna returned from her investor trip, I had already *N separating my life from hers. I smiled when she came through the door, suitcase in hand, makeup a little too fresh for someone who had supposedly just spent 3 days in back-to-back meetings. She hugged me. I hugged back. She asked if I missed her. I told her I was glad she got some time away. Then I asked what room the firm had put her in. She paused just for half a second. The Parkside Hotel. Room 716, I think. Honestly, I didn't even look at the number. I was dead tired. Cute. The room she actually checked into, the one with a king bed and 2 registered guests, had been 412. I didn't say anything. I just nodded, offered to order dinner. She smiled, kissed me on the cheek, and disappeared upstairs to shower. That was the last lie I ever let her tell me without consequence. That night, while she slept, I got to work. The first thing I did was make digital copies of every shared document we had. Taxes, house deeds, insurance policies, car registrations, business files. I uploaded it all to a secured cloud I'd set up under an alias. Then I logged into our shared bank account and took *TS of every unusual charge. Restaurants, car rentals, hotel stays. All the ones that didn't align with her supposed work schedule. Then I created new accounts. Personal ones. Separate ones. Quiet ones. I rerouted my paycheck. Locked down my savings. Removed her as an authorized user on anything that still carried my name. It took 2 days, 3 different phone calls to customer service, and 1 in-person visit to the bank. I played the concerned husband who was worried about potential fraud. No one questioned me. Next came the house. Turns out, I was the sole owner on the title. Jenna had never bothered to sign anything when we refinanced last year. Said she didn't want to deal with the paperwork. That laziness turned out to be my gift. The mortgage, the deed, the equity, all mine. I contacted a property lawyer, scheduled a quiet consultation. Told them I wanted to protect assets in the event of marital restructuring. They didn't blink. Meanwhile, I removed her access from everything digital. My Google Drive, my laptop, my tablet, my backup server. She tried to log in one afternoon and called from the office. Confused. Did something change with the Dropbox password? Can't get in. Oh, I said. Maybe the server updated. I'll check tonight. I never did, and she never asked again. I think part of her sensed the shift. Not enough to panic, but enough to tread lighter. She started texting more, asking how my day was going, sending me articles about weekend trips and new wine bars she wanted to try. It was the same script she'd used years ago when she wanted something. An apology, a favor, a softened version of the truth. I read every message like it was a memo from a department I planned to shut down. Around that time, I reached out to someone I hadn't spoken to in years. Eric Beltran, an old friend from my consulting days. We'd worked together once on a corporate sabotage case, upper management embezzling funds and blaming mid-level staff. Eric wasn't just a lawyer, he was a fixer. The kind of guy who understood paper trails and how do we *p*nize them. We met in a small cafe on the west side. I slid him a folder. He didn't even look through it before asking, "How bad?" "Bad enough," I said. "But I'm not looking for war, just precision." He nodded. Over the next few days, Eric helped me draft a divorce petition. Nothing dramatic. No public filings yet. Just something to keep in the chamber. He also gave me something better, a strategy. Not for revenge, but for leverage. "You don't blow things up, Alex," he said. "You take the air out slowly, one breath at a time, until they realize they're suffocating and don't even know why." That's exactly what I did. I contacted Jenna's firm, anonymously, posed as a compliance auditor, sent a secure tip through their internal ethics portal, complete with scanned receipts and date-stamped travel inconsistencies. I attached *TS of booking confirmations where she claimed to be at firm-sponsored hotels, but had instead billed expenses from different cities. Cities her lover's projects were located in. I didn't fabricate anything. I didn't need to. The facts were the *P*N. All I had to do was hand them over. I created a second email under a fake name and sent 2 reports. One to her HR department and one to their compliance lead. Each included inconsistencies between her calendar entries and actual transaction data, drawn directly from her firm's reimbursement history, which, thanks to a few photos of her screen and some guesswork on file naming conventions, I'd pieced together over the past week. I didn't expect them to react immediately. Corporations move slowly when they think they're being watched. But it planted the seed. At home, I kept my performance airtight. Made dinner. Washed the dishes. Watched Netflix with her like nothing was unraveling. She laughed at the show. I laughed too. But mine never reached my eyes. One night, she brought up the idea of a weekend getaway. "Just us," she said. "We've both been stressed. Maybe a lake cabin? Disconnect for a bit?" It almost made me laugh. The irony of her wanting to reconnect, just as I was carefully dismantling the entire foundation. "I'll look into it," I said. The next morning, I looked into her texts instead. She had left her phone charging in the kitchen while showering. I didn't even need to unlock it. Preview lit up the screen. "Peter, Thursday nights still on? I'll book the room." There it was. Confirmation. Like it had been the whole time, floating in plain sight. Thursday came and went. I didn't follow her. I didn't confront her. I waited. Quiet. Focused. That weekend, Jenna came home with a limp in her smile, a nervous edge in her voice. Something had changed. She was distant. Not the usual distracted kind, but cautious, like she was trying to gauge my mood. I played my part well. The next morning, I contacted the credit card company, reported unfamiliar charges, asked to disable a shared card we barely used. They asked if I wanted to issue a new card for my spouse. No, I said. She won't need access anymore. They didn't question it. By Sunday, the chessboard was fully set. I'd moved everything necessary into a separate structure. Locked down finances, safeguarded the house, gathered proof, silently triggered an internal review at her job. All without raising my voice. All without her suspecting a thing. This wasn't about punishing Jenna anymore. It was about liberating myself. From her lies, from the performance, from the exhausting work of pretending we were still in a marriage that hadn't existed in months. I wasn't broken. I wasn't furious. I was prepared. And in the end, I knew this. The moment she finally realized what I had done, it wouldn't be with a shout or a door slam. It would be with silence. And that silence would be deafening. It didn't take long. Less than 2 weeks after I submitted the anonymous reports, the ripple started. Not waves, not headlines, just quiet cracks. Hairline fractures in Jenna's professional world that began to spread across the polished surface she'd worked so hard to maintain. The first sign was subtle. I came downstairs one morning to find her pacing the kitchen, her phone clutched in both hands, brows pulled tight. She looked up at me like she hadn't expected to see me there. "Everything okay?" I asked, voice neutral. She hesitated, then smiled. "Yeah, just some mess at the office. Budget stuff. One of our vendors submitted duplicate invoices." I nodded slowly. "Weird." "Yeah." She glanced back at her phone. "It's probably nothing." It wasn't nothing. I knew exactly what she was looking at, what kind of emails were coming in, what kind of flags had been raised. Her firm had started digging. Not publicly, not yet. Just internal auditing, reconciling timelines, comparing receipts, asking quiet questions. Jenna didn't mention it again, but she started coming home earlier, staring longer at her laptop, typing harder, faster, like if she just answered everything fast enough, it'd stop whatever clock had started ticking in the background. Then came the second crack. Peter, or as I now knew him, Peter Ellis, events manager, freelanced for the firm on contract, but had been involved in far more special projects than anyone realized. That became apparent when I checked his LinkedIn and found a long list of jobs that didn't match what Jenna had told me. One of them dated back to a launch she claimed to have attended alone. One Thursday afternoon, I overheard her on the phone in the home office, door half open, her voice low, strained. "I'm not throwing you under the bus, Peter, but they're asking questions. About travel. About access. I told you we should've." She stopped suddenly, as if sensing the air shift. I stepped loudly into the hallway, pretending I was heading for the laundry. Silence behind the door. A minute later, she emerged with a forced smile. "Client call," she said. "They're switching vendors again. Nothing ever sticks." "Right?" I replied. "Must be frustrating." That weekend, Peter's name disappeared from her calendar. 3 days later, she came home pale, tight-jawed. "What's wrong?" I asked, flipping a page in the book I wasn't really reading. "They've suspended him," she said, her voice pitched just slightly too high. "Some nonsense about ethics violations. Total scapegoat stuff." "Huh," I said. "That's serious." She opened her mouth like she wanted to say more, then stopped, walked into the kitchen, poured herself a drink at 2 in the afternoon. I didn't push. I let her fill the silence with her own unraveling. By the end of the week, it was clear something bigger was unfolding. A formal investigation was opened. Not into her officially, but close enough. The kind that starts with routine compliance and ends with HR calling people in one by one. Jenna was summoned midweek. She told me over dinner like it was a formality. "They just want to confirm a few travel logs. It's annoying." I nodded. "Want me to help double-check anything?" "No," she said quickly. "It's all handled. I bet." She left early that morning, dressed carefully, neutral blouse, no lipstick, low heels, damage control attire. She looked like a student going to defend a thesis she hadn't written. That night, She came home and didn't say a word, just poured wine, drank it in 3 gulps, and turned on the TV. I didn't ask. She didn't tell. But I saw the change. The slack in her shoulders. The fog behind her eyes. She was spiraling, but quietly. The way people do when they know they can't fall apart in public, so they ration out their collapse behind closed doors. Then came the social isolation. People started pulling away. Calls she used to get, coworkers, clients, design leads, slowed, then stopped. Her notifications weren't lighting up like they used to. I'd see her checking her phone, waiting for messages that never came. Her laughter, the one she reserved for office gossip or group texts, was gone, replaced with a quiet tapping. Scrolling through feeds, probably seeing herself excluded from outings she would have planned a month ago. And then the personal betrayals began. Her sister called me on a Sunday. She showed up crying at my apartment last night, she said, skipping hello. She said she's being investigated. That you ruined everything. I took a breath. I didn't ruin anything. I just stopped pretending. Silence. She won't tell me what happened, her sister said after a beat. Just that she's scared. That you turned on her. That she's losing everything. I didn't respond right away. Then I said, tell her I hope she figures out who really caused it. Click. A few days later, Jenna tried to stay at her mother's. Didn't even tell me. Just packed a bag in silence and left after dinner. I knew where she was going before she did. She was back 3 hours later. She told me to go home, Jenna said, dropping her bag in the hallway. Said she didn't want to get involved. I raised an eyebrow. Sounds like she already is. She sat on the edge of the couch, jacket still on, and stared at the floor. She thinks I brought this on myself. I didn't say anything. She turned her head slowly to look at me. Did you tell her something? No, I said calmly. She probably just figured it out on her own. That landed. I saw it hit. A full second of dead air between us, during which she finally understood the walls weren't just closing in from her job. They were coming in from every angle. And I wasn't going to hold them back anymore. After that night, something in her deflated. She stopped asking me to sit with her. Stopped filling silences with empty small talk. She floated around the house like a ghost version of herself. No longer hiding, just exposed. Her makeup stayed in the drawer. She wore the same sweatshirt 3 days in a row. She barely touched her wine. Her world was shrinking. And still I said nothing. Not a word about Peter. Not about the hotel. Not about the emails or the receipts or the carefully catalogued trail of her second life. I didn't need to. The silence said more than confrontation ever could. And the more silent I stayed, the louder her own mind became. One night, I found her sitting on the floor of the guest room, the closet door open, her suitcase half-packed. She looked up when I walked in. Red eyes, unfolded clothes. You want me to leave, she said, voice small. I leaned against the doorframe. I didn't say that. You don't have to. Her hands dropped into her lap. Everyone else already has. I looked at her for a long time. This wasn't the Jenna I had married. Not even the version who'd betrayed me. This was someone else entirely, hollowed out, untethered. But here's the thing about empathy. It's not infinite. At some point, when you've spent months being lied to, when someone has rewritten your shared story in secret, when you've been used like a silent witness to your own humiliation, empathy runs dry. You should pack, I said softly. Whatever you need. She didn't cry. She just nodded. That was the moment she realized the damage wasn't just professional. It was personal. Int asterisk mate. Close to the bone. Not because I screamed. Not because I begged. But because I had quietly stopped covering for her and started letting the truth walk in on its own. I left the wreckage behind and moved to Montana Springs. Quiet town. Clean air. I built furniture, kept my phone off, and spoke only when I had something worth saying. 2 months later, I met Lily, no secrets, no games. Just real. When the lawyer emailed, Jenna had taken the deal, probation, fines, restricted employment. I didn't react. I closed the laptop. That part of my life was gone. I didn't need to revisit it. I still remember the night it all shifted. Her standing in the spotlight, voice too rehearsed, calling me her silent support like it was a punchline. The room clapped. I didn't. I just stood up and walked out. She looked more afraid of losing control than losing me. I never heard her voice again, and I never let anyone else narrate my life. From now on, the mic stays with me, and I only speak when the truth is mine to tell.